Meanwhile, the wrangling continues over the US plan to end the war in Ukraine. The Kremlin rejected a European counter-proposal to call that plan unconstructive. US and Ukrainian negotiators held talks this weekend in Geneva. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said afterwards that the two sides made tremendous progress. The EU's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas told CNN that Russia will need to make concessions to achieve peace.
We welcome all the efforts to achieve this peace, but we shouldn't take the focus off who doesn't want the peace, which is Russia. I mean, we haven't heard of Russia making any concessions or any concessions to be asked from Russia because, we should be discussing on how Russia would not invade again and how Russia would stop this war and not what Ukraine could or should give up because there's one victim and one aggressor in this war.
With me, Ambassador Kurt Volker, former US ambassador to NATO and former special representative for Ukraine negotiations. We don't know what's in the revised versions, but we do know the non-starters, particularly, for example, a refusal to allow a European force in Ukraine, the question of NATO membership and the size of the military. So I'm wondering, bearing in mind that Moscow's already rejected it, it's getting sticky.
Well, it's been sticky for a few years now, Richard, and it remains that way. What happened in the past week was really rather remarkable. You had the U.S. put forward a plan that was essentially the Russian proposal. Of course, that's rejected by Ukraine, by Europeans. Marco Rubio is dispatched to clean up the mess and come up with something reasonable again. And of course, Moscow will reject anything reasonable because from the beginning, their objective is to attack Ukraine, eliminate the government, eliminate Ukraine as a sovereign, independent state. And a reasonable plan would not give them that. So, of course, they reject that. That means we're back where we were before this past week, which is how do you get Russia to actually end the war? And that requires more pressure on Russia economically and militarily.
So let's put the plans aside because we can have no knowledge of exactly who or what or where, when or why. What we can discuss is when you think President Trump is going to use any of this as an excuse to walk away.
Well, if he did just walk away, provide no more U.S. military support, no more intelligence, no more finances, Ukraine would still fight on, Europeans would still help Ukraine, and this would still continue. But it would be an embarrassment for President Trump on the scale of the embarrassment for Joe Biden from walking away from Afghanistan.
So in that case, to an extent, the president's stuck in it and lumbered in it, and he says he just wants peace, 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 and I do not for one second deny or question his bona fides on that. I don't see, unless he's prepared to get tougher with Putin, a way forward, because Putin's clearly not going to accept anything less.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the reality is that it is getting tougher for Putin. Their economy is in a very weak condition. They have high inflation, high interest rates, no growth. They have problems with access to components and materials, including for their military industry. And the military effort is going very badly for Russia. They lose thousands and thousands of lives and gain almost no territory. They are succeeding at killing civilians, but that's not making a strategic difference in the war. So piling on to that pressure on Putin is the best way to get Putin to end it.
How much more can Europe it can afford to do a lot more. How much more do you think Europe is prepared to do?
Well, that's a very good question, Richard, because there are so many things that are obvious that Europe could and should do that they still have not pulled the trigger on yet. For instance, seizing those frozen Russian assets, $300 billion worth sitting in Europe that could be used to fund Ukraine's defenses, could be used to fund Ukraine's budget and not put the burden on European taxpayers. That would be an obvious one. This coalition of the willing that people have talked about. Let's flesh that out, and maybe it can be deployed before there's a ceasefire to at least provide some measure of training and equipping of the Ukrainians even now. There's more that we can do on air defense for Ukraine collectively as NATO. We could be integrating an intelligence picture. We could be helping them integrate the weapon systems that they've got. There's a lot more that could be done, but we just have been so slow and so cautious along the way.
I'm grateful for your time tonight, sir. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.